Hey y'all, it's me, Van Lufa. Thought I would do this video really quick before I get ready to go to work this afternoon. Today was a short day, so it was really nice. Okay, today is day 14 of the Derek Chauvin trial. Watching and recapping the trial so you don't have to. Today is April 15th, 2021. So a lot of today was mostly just discussing motions, to be honest, because the state was going to call a rebuttal witness today. So they were talking a lot about what they can and can't answer, or what they can and can't ask of that witness. Okay, so they opened up today with Mr. Nelson. He was talking to Mr. Chauvin about testifying. He told him he has the right to invoke his Fifth Amendment privilege. He said they have had lots of conversations over this time about whether he wanted to testify or not. He said, "You understand that they can't equate your silence with guilt." Yes. Last night we had further discussions about this. Yes. "Have you decided to testify or invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege?" And he chose to invoke his Fifth Amendment privilege today. I think that's what we all expected. I would have been shocked had he said that he was going to testify, honestly. Okay, so the state's going to call a rebuttal witness, but first they had some newly discovered evidence. We have blood gas evidence from Hennepin County that would show carbon monoxide readings from Mr. Floyd's blood. They were discovered yesterday by Dr. Baker. It was on one of the slides yesterday from Dr. Fowler. It was in the medical records, but not disclosed to me by the hospital. So Dr. Baker called Mr. Blackwell and said, "Hey, I discovered these lab results that weren't disclosed to you." He had been listening to Dr. Fowler's testimony and did some digging and found those lab results. Then Mr. Nelson said, "I received these test results at 7:53 this morning." And he was having a difficult time reaching Mr. Fowler as he was on an airplane leaving the state. Fowler testified that you can't rely on oxygen levels because carbon monoxide binds to the oxygen and gives you a false reading. And so you really needed to have the carboxyhemoglobin testing. And this is the info that the state has had. They've had ample notice that this could have been a part of Dr. Fowler's testimony, and it's prejudicial now that Dr. Fowler has testified and left to bring forth this evidence. He had received a copy of Dr. Tobin's rebuttal points. So Dr. Martin Tobin, the pulmonologist who had already testified, is being called back as the rebuttal witness. So Mr. Nelson had seen the talking points that they had for him today. He said 3 of the 4 points are not relevant. And then they discussed the different points that they were going to make. And he said, if this information about the new lab results or the new evidence goes in front of the jury today, I will be moving for a mistrial. Mr. Blackwell then came back up and spoke and said, and kind of being his badass self again, "Obviously, we wouldn't be doing this had there not been new opinions by Dr. Fowler raised on the stand." So he was kind of scolding Mr. Nelson a little bit. And then he kind of gave his opinion of how that was. Then they discussed how Dr. Fowler had said that the anoxic seizure could have been from a primary heart event, but he never put that in his report. And he said he went searching for studies to support that and couldn't find any. So basically what he was saying was, Fowler brought up all this stuff he never put on his report. He didn't bring it up until he was on the stand. Okay, so the judge then says that the subpoena to the Hennepin County Medical Center was insufficient and that they should check their standard operating procedures. So he was really upset that he felt that the Hennepin County Medical Center were the people that were at fault with this. It's ultimately, okay, so what the judge said was, ultimately they weren't given any notice of this, so they will not be allowing those questions to go to Dr. Tobin about the newly discovered lab results. He said he can testify on other things, but even if he hints about the lab results, he's going to call a mistrial. And he said, this late disclosure is not how we should be operating here. And then Mr. Nelson got back up and said, at this time, the defense rests. So then the state called their rebuttal witness, Dr. Martin Tobin, and Dr. Jerry Blackwell was the one who interviewed him today. They discussed Mr. Floyd's potential exposure to carbon monoxide. Were you able to hear testimony regarding this yesterday? He said yes. Were you able to see the slides? Yes. He said, and then he showed the slide and read it, where on the slide of Dr. Fowler's it said, in 7 minutes, Mr. Floyd's carboxyhemoglobin could have increased by 10 to 15%. Do you agree with that? Dr. Tobin said, no, I do not. Then he defined what the carboxyhemoglobin is. He believes that the information is unreliable that Dr. Fowler gave based on the arterial blood gases that were obtained on Mr. Floyd at the hospital. He also went on to state that if he had an oxygen saturation level of 98%, which he did, that doesn't tell us anything about so Mr. Blackwell said, if he had an oxygen saturation level of 98%, does that tell us anything about the carbon monoxide? And he said yes. It says that the maximum amount of carbon monoxide could have been only 2%, nothing more. Then they discussed research on the hypopharynx. Then Judge Cahill wanted a 5-minute stretch break, because of course he did. Stretch in place, he said. And then he ended up changing that to, they were going to have a recess until 1:45 p.m. When they came back from that recess, they did cross-examination. Mr. Nelson asked him about lab testing machines and their accuracy. They talked also about hypopharynx narrowing, and then there was no redirect by the state. At this point, Mr. Blackwell got back up and said that the state of Minnesota rests. They went ahead and, okay. So then Judge Cahill then started talking to the jury at this time. He stated that closing arguments start on Monday and then deliberation. And I explained this before, even though the state and the defense have both rested, they really did not want to start closing arguments tomorrow, because as soon as deliberations start, the jury is sequestered, and he did not want them to be sequestered over the weekend. And he said, I know you're asking yourselves, how much do I pack? He said, plan for long, but hope for short. And then he started talking about how the jury will be provided with a laptop computer so that they will have all audio, video, and evidence on there, and also access to all exhibits. And then he said to the jury, you may go, we will convene Monday at 9 a.m. Then the jury left. Then Judge Cahill started talking about the charge conference that they're going to have in chambers following this, but it is off the record, so we don't get to see it. He told Mr. Chauvin that he had a right to be present at the charge conference, but that he is waiving his right to be present, so he won't be there. And then he said we needed to discuss how to answer the jurors' questions. He said, you aren't obligated to stay here during the deliberations, and we don't want people coming and going from the government center. So their plan to answer any jurors' questions along the way will be done via Zoom. So all lawyers just had to have the ability to be able to hop on Zoom, at any given time to help answer those questions. And that was it. It was a short day. I was able to get this video out before I went to work. I'm so excited. I have tomorrow off, both from the trial and from work. So I won't even know what to do with myself. I will say one thing. I am sure glad that this is almost over. And had I knew how much work it was going to be before I started doing all the recaps, I may not have done it, but I'm glad I stuck with it, because there were times where I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can do this, but I managed it. So anyway, thank you guys again so much for following along. We're right at the end. We just got a little bit more to go, and hopefully we will have a verdict soon. I don't have any sense of how long I think it will take the jury to deliberate in this matter. Maybe I'll be watching some YouTube videos of, like Court TV or Law and Crime Network. Maybe they'll give me an idea. They might have a better sense of that, but I don't, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.